Greetings. Welcome to the Leader Show. Welcome to the Leader Show. My name is Lugalia Kelvin, and I'll be your host for the day. Today, with us is Dr. Tim Kirui. He is the Vice Chancellor of the International Leadership University, and he'll be taking us through the question, do we have a leadership or followership crisis? Welcome, Dr. Tim.
Thank you very much, Kelvin, and good morning, viewers. It's a joy to be able to be back here at the Leader Show. And this morning, as has been mentioned, we'll be looking at an interesting topic. What is our challenge as a society? Is it a leadership crisis or a followership crisis? Let me begin with a question. Are you a leader or a follower? Are you a leader or a follower? Well, you chew on that a little bit, reflect on it, as I tell you just a little bit about the International Leadership University, where I come from, and then I'll very quickly pick up on that question, and we discuss together whether one ought to aspire to be a leader or a follower. At the International Leadership University, as you can hear from the name, of course, we have a university that focuses on leadership, so this is very much in our space. And I just wanted to mention that we have programs from the certificate level to PhD in leadership and governance. And to break that down, those include courses in the areas like marketing, business administration, organizational leadership management, women in leadership, Christian ministry leadership, and at the higher levels also we have corporate leadership, educational leadership, and public governance. And also we have programs, of course, in the area of theology and Christian ministry. These includes also children's ministry, and lastly, counseling psychology. We are also developing some new programs in the area of ICT, early childhood education, servant leadership, and also one that will support the spouses of Christian ministers. We also have some short courses. Those are usually on demand, can be from a half a day to a few days, and depending on the interests of the people who we are working with. And you are very welcome to join us to consider those. In whatever we do, we seek the well-being of the character of the leaders, that people enhance their character, they enhance their competencies, their knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, and also their ability to connect to the context or contextual relevance to be able to bring transformation. So back to our question, are you a leader or a follower? Well, to be interesting to hear what maybe a cross-section of us would say. But the truth is that we are both. In fact, we are often more of followers more than we are leaders, all of us. Even maybe the highest office in the land. So let's say, talk about His Excellency, the President. He is also a follower most of the time and only leads at certain times. For example, when a new president comes to office, it is often maybe a sergeant major, and not a very high-ranking official who drills him on how to march to the beats of the anthems when he is doing a parade. He is following now that lowly place. He's a commander-in-chief, but at that point he has to follow a sergeant major who knows how to do the drills, and so on. Talk about technology. Being an adult, I'm sure like all of us as parents, it is usually our children who show us how to use the gadgets. They are much better at it. At that point, you are following. You are not necessarily the leader, but you are following. When you come to something like maybe your food and nutrition, maybe it is your spouse or maybe a nutritionist who you have to follow. And maybe another one is maybe the area of dressing and makeup. We've been seeing him in a new fashion and so on. I'm sure some fashion designer or makeup artists have had to guide and so on. So you can see that even the highest office in the land, the person who holds that office often follows. Actually, a lot of the time, and at certain times only, is when they lead. To be clear, of course, leadership is very important. We are a university that, talks about leadership, that trains people for leadership to the highest levels, like I said, up to the PhD level. And I myself, I'm trained in that area. My PhD is in leadership. So I'm passionate about leadership, but I'm also well aware that leadership alone cannot be able to provide what we need to transform a society. There are a few studies, I'll mention just a few, just to give us a context, that refer to this area of followership. The technical studies or academic study of leadership, of followership, began around the year 1955, according to Baker. And, but in subsequent years, these studies and, of course, moved together with, of course, the study of leadership over the years, and lots of research has been done. I'll mention a few highlights that maybe would be helpful. Robert Kelly was one of those. In 1988, he put out an article at a time when people are very, very focused on leadership. He wrote an article that was titled "In Praise of Followers." And that, of course, disturbed the leadership space because people are thinking, no, it's all about leadership. Everything depends on leadership. And then he's saying here, maybe there is something about followership that we need to look up. I'll refer to this study a little later because it was a groundbreaking study, in fact, almost a study ahead of its time. Here in Africa, there was a study done by Mobosi in 1991 in the Nigerian context that looked at the leadership followership behavior in the Nigerian context. And basically, Mobosi concluded that followership was a neglected aspect of leadership studies. So not enough has been done. In fact, like we say, there maybe has been a romance of leadership to the detriment of followership. A bit later, Buchanan argued in 2007 that there can be no leadership, of course, without followership. Maybe that goes without saying. Then Reggio, Shalev, and Lippmann Blupman in 2008 released a book, The Art of Followership. And they argued that book basically argues that great followers create good leaders. Great followers create great leaders and organization. And in fact, they put the weight on the followers, that they are the ones who create good leaders and good organizations. And the good followers, some study has been done by Kellerman, have been described as courageous, and we'll look a little bit at courageous followership, or responsible and exemplary, like the work that Kelly had done a bit earlier. Now let's look a little bit at Shalef's work. There's a book released actually by that title in 2003, Courageous Followership, and basically looked at followership and courage in followership as a distinguishing mark of responsible followers. And basically identified 6 things that I thought would be helpful for us to begin to interact with this subject. The first thing that Ira Shalef talked about was that responsible followers, courageous followers, assume responsibility. Very many times in a society, in organizations, people don't take responsibility. For example, if I was to ask a question, who is responsible for the mess we see ourselves in sometimes in society? People are very quick to say, oh, maybe it's our politicians, our leaders, but rarely do we take responsibility. In the first place, who puts politicians, including bad ones, in office? It is ourselves as a citizen, so we should be taking or assuming responsibility. Secondly, good followers serve. Again, that's a quality that is not very common. Everybody wants to be served, but it is Jesus who said the greatest is the one who serves. Thirdly, courageous followers also challenge authority. They don't allow bad things to happen when they are sitting. And I think that's one of our weakest moments as a nation even. Many people observe, whether it's in a queue at a public office or in a matatu, driving to work or in a car, and you see this driver, giving the money. None of us say something about it or challenges that to say this is not right for us. Because if the policeman continues to receive bribes, they will also not pay attention to the roadworthiness of the vehicle. So people would often pass a police roadblock, the policeman takes a bribe, and a bit further down the line, they go and have an accident because the vehicle was not roadworthy. They were not courageous to face up to the fact and to challenge authority. Can you imagine if several of us voiced something and said, no, what you're doing is not right, because it will blind you from being objective, and so on. A few people may be doing that every day. The policeman also has a conscience. Most of them will begin to move away from their bad habits, or at least they'll realize that people have a voice and they are able to take action about that. The fourth thing that courageous followers do, it is to participate in transformation, to engage in the process of bringing change. And maybe the example I gave is a good one, that to show that we can be able to participate in processes that bring about transformation. And finally, Shalef talked about the fact that courageous followers take moral action. When they see something is not right and the morals are being flouted, the values are being flouted, they take action based on their moral conviction. They don't allow people to do the wrong thing. Again, some of us observe people doing the wrong thing, but we never take action, take moral action, and of course, to be able to bring a change to that situation. So Kelly, I refer to Robert Kelly's work in 1988. So in 1982, Kelly released a book where he synthesized the experiences of many leaders in the American context and performing this research with about 700 people in more than 20 industries and personal reflections. And basically, Kelly argued in his assessment, this is again to just give us some support to the area of followership, that only about 10% to 20% of the organization's results could be attributed to the leader. Over 80% was due to the followers. And when you think about a nation like Kenya, we over-focus on the leaders. We wait for their, benevolence. If they find it in their good heart to do something for us, maybe the cost of living or something like that will come down. No, Kelly says it's about the followers. 80% of the results will come from their getting involved in demanding good governance, holding leaders to account. Most of us don't participate, even though we have public participation as a major facet of our new constitution. People don't present memoranda, they don't complain, they don't say anything. And so then things, of course, continue to go at times from bad to worse. It is about us as leaders, the followers, being able to take our place and so on. I'll refer to one other study by somebody called Madera, not Mandela, but Bandera this time, and argued that basically good followership prepared somebody for leadership roles. By observing and working alongside leaders, then one would be able to prepare for future leadership roles. And in that particular study and the model that came out of that, Madera was able to see that good followers emerge good leaders. That when the followers are engaged and so on, they actually help the leaders to be better leaders. And also, on the other hand, that the skilled leaders were also often skilled followers. Having served as followers, then when they come to leadership space, they are more cognizant of the need to work with the followers. And basically, Madera was able to posit that, just using the example of the geese, many of us may be familiar with the example that has been given about the geese, that they fly together when they are moving sometimes from continent to continent. But when the leader at the front, the geese that is taking most of the wind, gets tired, they often rotate out and allow another geese to take their place, so that you can see the interchange there between the leadership and followership. So to balance maybe, it is to say that both leadership and followership are needed. And when one is maybe in a leadership role, you realize you're not the best person for that, or you're tired, rotate out, allow another person to take. So you become a follower, another person takes the lead. And that's why, again, when their turn, they also feel that now they've done their bit, there's that interchange between leadership and followership. Both are needed. And when there's a crisis, it is both. But it's because majority of us are followers, and most of us, all of us follow more than we lead, the real crisis, and it's not a leadership crisis, in my opinion. It is a followership crisis. Lack of courageous, responsible followership. A final study I'll mention about is by somebody called Tagore in the Ghanaian context in 2011. And Tagore was trying to identify transformational leaders who will be able to accelerate national development in the Ghanaian context. And basically, Tagore concluded that many of the leaders do not want followership, but followership. I hope you get the context there, or the difference. That many leaders sometimes don't want good followers, because good followers will hold them to account. They'll challenge them. They'll take moral action, all the things we talked about. They participate in transformation. But they want followership. Sheep as in, condor in Swahili. Basically saying they just want people who follow without complaining, with arguing, without engaging, and so on. We are talking about followership, as in S-H-I-P, not just sheep as in S-H-E-E-P. What are you today? Are you a good follower, showing good followership, or are you follow a sheep who just follows without asking? In conclusion, Jesus himself said that we are to come and follow him in Luke chapter 18, verse 22. And in John chapter 12, verse 26 says, whoever serves me must follow me. So Jesus calls us to follow him. As we follow him, we'll be able to serve him and do his purposes in the nation, in society. Where he is, he says, there his servants must also be. And Paul says the same thing, that follow me as I follow Christ. I hope that this has given you some thoughts to reflect on as we go to the discussion in the whole area of followership. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Amazing, amazing, amazing presentation there on do we have a leadership or a followership crisis. And it is interesting just to see some of the insights that have been shared with us, that great followers are good leaders. Dr. Tim,
thank you.
Welcome once again.
Thank you very much.
And maybe just to start us off, what is a crisis? What is really the definition of the word crisis?
It's interesting that you asked that question.
Yes.
I had just made an assumption that all of us, of course, understand a crisis. But a crisis, of course, is an opportunity when, of course, things are not necessarily going well.
Yeah.
There are challenges. Things are not going according to plan. But it is also an opportunity. In fact, the Chinese character for crisis has both a problem, a challenge, and an opportunity at the same time. So when there is a crisis, it's actually a good opportunity to reflect. And that's why I'm calling on Kenyans and other viewers to say, what we are having now is an opportunity to revisit. Could we be looking at our situation as a nation from the wrong lens? That maybe it's been all about leaders, but yet maybe it should be about followers, and that they are the ones who need to take their place so that the leaders can align themselves to what the followers need.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And during your presentation, you mentioned about followership,
Yes.
the aspect of sheep and following as a sheep,
Yeah.
the SHEE.
Yeah.
And at times you come to a point where as a leader, you don't really, some leaders don't really want to be questioned
Yes.
about what they do. So when do you take action as a real follower now?
Yeah.
When do you take action and say, now we are in a crisis?
Yeah.
And even with the example of the geese that you gave, where the geese exchange and take turns on which one will lead. When do you take your turn and say, now I've been a follower for some time, I need to take leadership in this?
Thank you. I think we are called to be alert at all times. That's part of our call as Christians. As we are filled with the Spirit of God, as we are alert to God's purposes, as we have submitted ourselves to Him, we need to always be aware that we are to do His bidding. Jesus says, "Come, follow me," and of course, elsewhere He talks us about the fact that He now puts us to work. So I am a Christ servant all the time. I'm alert to opportunities around me all the time because they happen all the time. Sometimes they come unannounced. Sometimes some of them will possibly come in the context of a crisis. But you have to take every opportunity. In fact, that's what the Bible talks about, that making the most of every opportunity. So I think we have to be alert to that, to observe the opportunities, to observe the times, know the times, like the sons of Issachar, and what needs to be done at this point. Do I need to support the leader, and maybe that's all they need is to be affirmed and encouraged? Or maybe do I need to, maybe privately, go to my leader and say, I've been watching what you've been doing in this situation, and I appreciate that you are trying to bring change, but could it be that maybe there's a better way to do this? So it takes cost for some maturity and balance, because you cannot be, again, questioning all the time, challenging all the time.
Yeah.
So there are times to support and so on. In fact, they usually say for every, maybe 5 times that, you praise, then you have the right, you have built a bit of maybe, goodwill to be able to bring some challenge. So I think it calls for wisdom, but very often I find that there are opportunities everywhere. Like I said, on the street, on the road, in community where I live, and so on. There are opportunities everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
And even as you are doing your presentation, I was just pausing and asking, which one is better? Being a leader or being a follower? Which one is better?
That's true. I teach leadership, so but I'm well aware that unless we have good followers, even the good leaders will not be able to succeed. I mean, and even the opportunity like I have at the International Leadership University, I can only succeed to the extent, of course, that the followers also engage in the process. That they challenge me, they take moral action, they engage us in transformation, they serve. All the things we talked about are important. And yet, because most people are followers, it's only few who take leadership roles, then in a sense you can argue followership is more important. On the other hand, every leader, like I said, even using a strong example of a president, that the president also follows. They don't lead all the time. There are times that they also follow. And in fact, sometimes they just follow people who may be considered junior to their position.
Yeah.
Because that's the person who has what is needed at that point in time to be able to move things forward. So followership, I think, is an unsung hero, so to speak. It has not been given enough prominence. I think there have been the others talk about the romance of leadership. We are all too fascinated with leadership. It has its place. It's very important. But I think we need a balance of leadership and followership.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if we go to our topic,
Yes.
which is, do we have a leadership
Yeah.
or a followership crisis? And just pause and ask ourselves,
Yeah.
when do we say we are either in a leadership crisis or in a followership crisis?
Oh, they tend to happen at the same time. If you remember some of the studies I quoted, they talk
Yeah.
about how good followers bring about good leaders, and good leaders also, in a sense, create the space for good followers. They go together. And so I think whenever we find ourselves struggling as a nation, and currently, of course, our economy is struggling, maybe there are other issues of values and so on where we can see struggles, I think we have both. The leaders have their responsibility, they need to do that, but the followers also need to take their place. Unfortunately, the followers tend to often just look to the leaders and blame the leaders for everything,
Yes.
taking no responsibility. I think the situation will begin to change when we, as the followers, or the followers in that context, begin to take more responsibility. To say that, we put you in office, you're not doing what is called for, and then we maybe say in the context of a country, go back to the Constitution, what opportunities are there? You can even do a recall. There's a recall clause for people who are not performing. But now citizens need to mobilize themselves and tell the person that if you don't shape up, in the next maybe a few months, you're going to do a recall. And the citizens can do that. They just need to sign a petition, and that can begin the process for a recall. So I think it is, for me, the bigger crisis. We have both a leadership crisis and a followership crisis. But I think the bigger crisis is a followership crisis. Because we don't take responsibility, we don't feel responsible, and so on, and we don't do anything about our situation. Yet if the followers do that, our leaders, especially our politicians, are very quick to adjust when they notice things are not working.
Yeah.
They are very smart. They know how to read the mood and so on. But when there is no demand, good governance does not happen. Governance and leadership only happen on demand. Somebody has to be demanding the good governance, and then the good leadership. Unfortunately, we make very little demand on our leaders, so they just do what they want. They are having a heyday because we don't make any demands on them.
Nice, quite interesting when you talk about the place of demands, and that speaks to the kind of actions that we need to take even as followers to ensure that our leaders are in check.
That's true.
And you spoke about moral action. What is moral action in the sense of being a follower?
Sure.
Yeah.
Some of the viewers would remember that in the year 2002, I think it was, when we had the first multi-party, government, so to speak, that came out of that election, the citizens were apprehending the police who were caught bribing, and they would actually take them to they frog march them to the police station. Citizens, not armed. The policeman could be armed, but the citizens would actually take these people. That's the power that is there in followership. That when we do that, that's moral action because you are doing something wrong, or they're asking for a bribe, or they're not serving people, and so on. So whenever the values that we hold as a country, and those have been enshrined, I was privileged to be part of the team that helped put together some of the values. So whenever they are being flouted, they're not being observed, that's a call for moral action. Do something about that. Is the officer not serving you well? Or they're not being diligent, and so on. We have opportunities to report. Nowadays, there is quite a bit of process that the government has put in place to report also behavior that's not right. And so most of us will not do it. I think many times because people feel discouraged or they have not seen action being taken. So of course, there's a place for now those who are responsible to also make sure that they are responding. Let me give an example. Even at the university where we are, there are sometimes things that could happen that can only be, improved when somebody takes an observation. So the other day we had a forum with our students, and it was an open forum. They could ask any question and raise any issue. Since that time, just about 2 weeks ago, we have been able to deal with quite a number of things. And yesterday we had a review meeting with the leadership, and they were thanking us, saying, we can see that a lot of the things we did have been acted upon. And by acting on them, then of course we now infuse them with more energy, more courage to be able to speak to issues. And we believe we can only get better. Leaders need to be confident that being questioned, being held to account is a good thing for the leader because you perform better.
That is nice.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about action
Uh-huh.
and in the sense of moral action,
Yeah.
can we have immoral action from followers?
Okay, that's good. I think, of course, how we do it also has to be done right. So the moral action also has an aspect on the part of the person doing it. If I begin to shout down the president of the country or something, of course, I may be calling them out on something that is really there, but the way I'm doing it is not right. So the moral there binds both myself and the leader. But the moral action there has to do with the fact that it is based on your moral conscience. Your values are being, as I said, they are being tramped upon and so on. So you begin to take action on that regard. But you have to do it again in a responsible manner. Or even if it's your supervisor at the office, you can't always be saying bad things about them and talking down on them in the presence of everybody. Very often just because of the well-being of the leader, praise them in public, but in private you can now challenge them.
Challenge them.
Yeah.
Nice. So when I want to maybe take an action against a certain leader, and probably we have different values. So where does our values come to a place where we can maybe say, now I can take an action towards this thing that was done by a certain leader? Because at times our values tend to be different from point to point.
Very good question. In the context of a country, of course, we have a constitution. It is what defines what is right and what is not right, and so on. But in the context of our everyday behavior, it is, of course, also guided both by our own sense of moral conscience, but also the values that we hold as a society. I think that's the other place I would like to appeal to us as a country. I think what we need to do is to strengthen the moral fabric, the value system, so that people now know what is right and what is not right. And everybody is aware of it and upholding it. It's for something as simple as just throwing trash, and so on. I remember some Kenyans going to Uganda at one point, and they bought a banana. There are lots of bananas, good bananas in Uganda. And after they had their banana, they threw away the peels. Some old mama came and said, "We don't do that here, Kenyans. Here we take care of our space. Could you please pick that peel and put it in the right place?" Wow. Those are values that they hold as a society that, again, we don't seem to hold. So being able to define that, from the very basic things and so on. So the Constitution, and so on. Of course, for us as Christians now, the Word of God, the Bible then, of course, becomes our reference point. It is a judge of what is good and bad, and in a sense, what is moral and what is not moral.
This is nice.
Yeah.
Just interesting from the insights that you are giving. And yes, you've defined the word crisis. What is followership crisis?
Thank you. It is when we don't take our place, assume responsibility to hold our leadership to account. As I've said severally, leadership thrives when the followers are engaged. When I, as a leader, in the organization that I lead, the International Leadership University, if I am accountable both to those that are above me, the council, the board of trustees, and others, but also to the people that I lead, the people that I work with, our Senate, our management board, and other organs, that I am held to account, and by every staff, every stakeholder, that I'm responsible, I'm accountable for what I do. When I create the space to do that, as a leader, then of course I can get good feedback. I'll be able to know what is not working well, what is not communicating well. Because sometimes it's just even a question of communication. You could be doing the right thing, but it's not communicating or being communicated the right way. So a followership crisis is when people don't engage. People detach themselves from the situation. I think where we are right now, even talking about the cost of living and other concerns that we have, moral issues, there have been, of course, challenges like with Shakahola and so on, and other challenges that we're having as a society. We are seeing a lot of mental health issues and so on. All of these need us to be able to get into the spaces so that we are able to take our place, to do what needs to be done to improve the situation.
To improve the situation.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Yeah.
So what will be the telltale signs that now, even as a country or as an institution, as an organization, that you are in a crisis? Either a leadership crisis or followership crisis. Okay. What will be the telltale signs?
And I think first of all is the question of happiness. You know, nowadays the United Nations actually has measures happiness as an index.
Wow.
And in fact,
Through the Bible.
Whoever shall seek to save his life, if you go back to living for yourself, you're going to lose it. But whoever shall lose his life, give up his life for my sake, he shall preserve it.
Enjoy interesting, knowledge-packed, yet simple teachings through his humor and in-depth understanding of God's Word.
The last people that tried to put God in a box, literally, he rose again. He wouldn't stay in their compartment. If God was small enough for me to figure out, he wouldn't be big enough for me to worship.
Tune in to Hope TV for John Cousin every 10 p.m., 4 a.m., and 10 a.m. weekdays on Hope TV, where you look and live. Hope TV is where you look and live, with an excellent selection of the best Christian programming consisting of local and international content of inspirational stories, talk shows, Bible commentary, youth, health shows, children entertainment, contemporary gospel music, extended times of worship, live broadcast, news, movies, drama, Christian ministry programs, and so much more. Hope TV is another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministries, with over 45% of authentic and credible local content every week. Hope TV is a sister station to Hope FM, Kenya's leading Christian radio station, with footprints across the country. Tune in to Hope TV, where you look and live. Liven up your day with these Southern Gospel favorites. The Bill Gaither Show, featuring veteran gospel artists. The Gaither Vocal Band. And I know, yes I know. Homecoming series, interviews, and much more. A Bill Gaither Show, only on Hope TV. We know you have great taste for music, and we do too.
I know who God says I am, what he says I am, where he says I'm at.
Enjoy all-time Christian hits every Tuesday from 12 p.m.
This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love.
on Hope Junction.
Just at the moment, many of those who believe in Jesus are feeling what I call the big squeeze. It feels like the militant forces in society that oppose the gospel have mobilized like never before. Hi, I'm Bernie Diamond, and welcome again to Fresh. Have you been feeling that too? And honestly, as we see governments enacting legislation to limit religious freedoms, as we see those militant forces of evil becoming more and more vocal, more aggressive in jamming, in shutting down the Christian voice, it can feel as though they're winning. There's this thing that rises up inside us that goes something like this: it shouldn't be this way. If God is the King of Kings, why isn't he doing something about this? Why do I feel so persecuted for my faith? Depending on where you live, perhaps there's nothing new in any of this. Or if, like me, you live in a place that's historically encouraged and accepted the Christian voice, maybe this rising tide of persecution comes as a shock, hence that feeling of the big squeeze. But it shouldn't come as any surprise at all. As Paul wrote to Timothy 2,000 years ago, everyone who wants to live showing true devotion to God in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. People who are evil and cheat others will become worse and worse. They will fool others, but they also are fooling themselves. Did you pick that? Everyone, no exceptions. If you're devoted to Christ, you will be persecuted. And that bit about things becoming worse and worse sure feels that way, doesn't it? But here's the good news. Those evil people, they're kidding themselves. Remember, your king is still on his throne. That's his word, fresh for you today. It's under pressure that coal is turned into diamonds, amen? So if you're feeling that big squeeze, I'd love to send you a free copy of our latest life application booklet. It's called The Grace Transformation. To request yours, stop by at christianityworks.com and you'll see that free offer right there towards the top of the homepage. Again, that's christianityworks.com.
Doubting is not good. No. That is a problem.
Let's pray and thank the Lord that He always has time to listen to our prayers.
Offensive, would you sign my tennis ball, please?
Every Friday at 11 a.m. on Hope Junction. We play the latest jams.
You're changing my altitude. My heart is yours. For you alone. For you alone.
Plus your requests. If your favorite song tells your story better, let the whole world hear it.